In a recent review on 20-ounce tumblers, I missed a few brands, including the Milwaukee Packout, so let's test the 30-ounce tumblers and see which brand is the best. In the first test, we'll see which tumblers do the best job of keeping hot drinks hot and cold drinks cold. We'll also see which ones prevent splashes and spills when they tip over. Then we'll see which tumblers are dishwasher safe. At a price of $10, the least expensive 30-ounce tumbler we'll be testing is made by Chilamics. It claims to be vacuum insulated and made of 188-304 stainless steel. Electro-polished on the inside to ensure your cup remains rust-free. Powder-coated on the outside to make it super easy to grip. Designed to keep hot drinks hot and cold drinks cold. The Chilamics is made in China. And the Chilamics weighs 304 grams. 30 ounces of spill can be disastrous. So let's see how well the tumblers handle a tip over. For a very affordable tumbler, the Chilamics perform well with the small amount of water splashing out of the tumbler. However, it did not leak anything when gently placed in the upside-down position. At a price of $19 is this Ozark Trail tumbler. It's made with high-grade 18-8 stainless steel. It has a non-skid bottom and a locking lid, designed for both hot and cold liquids. Made in China. And it's 458 grams for the Ozark Trail. And the Ozark Trail also performed well with just a small amount of water seeping out of the lid. However, it held all the water in when placed upside down. At a price of $21 is this Contigo brand. The tumbler comes with a straw and a splash-proof lid. It claims to keep drinks hot for up to 8 hours and cold for 24. Most of the brands we'll be testing are 30 ounces, but the Contigo holds 32. It claims to be dishwasher safe. The Contigo is made in China. And the Contigo is the heaviest yet at 477 grams. And the Contigo is definitely not designed to prevent leaks during tip over. And it leaks quite a bit of water when facing upside down. At a price of $23 is this Arctic Tumblers brand. Traps the cold in your beverages for 16 hours and heat up to 8 hours. They claim it's BPA free and built to last. They claim that their lid is splash proof. We're going to test that. The Arctic Tumblers did come with a straw. The Arctic Tumblers is made in China. And the Arctic is pretty light at 410 grams. And the Arctic Tumblers is the first in the lineup to avoid any leakage from tipping over. It did very well and held in all the water when upside down. At a price of $23 is this Beast brand. It's made of 18-8 stainless steel. It claims to be BPA free and eco-friendly. It claims to keep hot drinks hot and cold drinks cold. The Beast came with 2 different straws. The Beast is made in China, and it's 429 grams for the Beast. And the name Beast seems to fit as it held in all the water when tipped over and when placed upside down. At a price of $26 is this CamelBak, 18-8 stainless steel with full powder coat finish. They claim that this tumbler is dishwasher safe, BPA, BPS, and BPF free. It has a tri-mode lid for flow control and it's spill resistant. The CamelBak is made in China. And the CamelBak is pretty light at just under 400 grams. And the CamelBak really struggled when tipping over on its side. It also leaked pretty badly when facing down. Also at a price of $26, the same price as a CamelBak is this Buc-ee's brand. It claims to hold ice up to 24 hours. Narrow tall design for an easy grip base. The Buc-ee's is made in China, and it's 423 grams for the Buc-ee's. And the Buc-ee's also leaks pretty badly, just like the CamelBak when tipped over and when facing upside down. At a price of $29 is this Norday brand. It keeps drinks piping hot for 8 hours or icy cold for a full 24 hours. It has a leak-proof anti-spill lid. It's made of premium 18-8 stainless steel. The Norday is made in China. And the Norday weighs 395 grams. And the Norday held everything in when tipped over and when facing upside down. At a price of $30 is this Tervis brand, which is designed for cat people. They claim it's printed with eco-friendly plant-based inks. It claims that it's triple insulated and it keeps your drinks hot for 8 hours and cold for up to 24. It has copper-lined 18-8 stainless steel, made in China. And it's 439 grams for the Tervis. And this cat likes to mark its territory just a little when tipped over. And this cat really likes to mark its territory when faced upside down. At a price of $35 is this Stanley Quencher H2.0 tumbler. It keeps drinks hot for 5 hours and cold for up to 9. It's constructed of 90% recycled, BPA-free stainless steel. They claim that it's dishwasher safe. It's not designed to be totally leak-proof, but it is leak-resistant. Made in China. And the Stanley weighs 523 grams. And the Stanley leaked a little bit more than the Tervis cat tumbler when tipped over. However, the Stanley performed about the same as the Tervis when facing upside down. At a price of $38 is this Yeti brand, designed to fit in a standard-sized cup holder. The mag slider is not designed to be leak-proof and it will not prevent spills. It's dishwasher safe and it has a no-sweat design. The Yeti is made in China. And the Yeti is a little heavier than average at 488 grams. And the Yeti performed a little bit better than the Stanley when tipped over and when facing upside down. At a price of $40 is this BruMate brand. BruMate claims that they're the only brand that has 100% leak-proof straw. They say you can toss your drink in your bag and take it on the go without ever spilling a drop. We're going to test that. Keeps drinks cold for 24 hours. It has a sleek, tapered design that'll fit in standard cup holders. And the BruMate is by far the heaviest yet at 636 grams. And the BruMate performed very well and didn't leak a drop when tipped over or when facing upside down. I'll open the straw position and try this again. And the BruMate still performed well with just a small amount of leakage when tipped over and a little more leakage when facing upside down. Also at a price of $40 is this Milwaukee Packout. Milwaukee claims that they offer the longest temperature retention. This tumbler can be locked into position with the Milwaukee Packout system. Smooth open and close lid. They claim that it's dishwasher safe. They claim it offers all-day hot and cold temperature retention. Milwaukee claims that it's professionally made in China. And it's 534 grams for the Milwaukee. And the Milwaukee leaked just a small amount of water when tipped over. It has a slow drip when facing upside down. At a price of $45, the most expensive tumbler we'll be testing is made by Corkcicle. Keeps beverages cold for 12 hours. It's a triple insulated stainless steel travel mug. It even includes a straw. It's supposed to be dishwasher safe and the lid is supposed to be spill proof. The Corkcicle is made in China. And the Corkcicle weighs 635 grams. And the Corkcicle leaked just about the same amount as the Milwaukee when tipped over. However, the Corkcicle leaks pretty badly around the straw gasket when facing upside down. At a price of $2 is this uninsulated cup. Let's see how the insulated cups perform against this one. And the uninsulated cup only weighs 58 grams. And the uninsulated cup performed just as well as many of the tumblers when tipped over. However, it leaks pretty badly when facing upside down. Weight can sometimes be an indicator of quality, and the Chilamics is the lightest tumbler at 304 grams. The Norday and CamelBak are also pretty light at 395 and 398 grams respectively. Assessing performance for tip over is highly subjective, but the Arctic Tumbler, Beast, Norday, and BruMate didn't experience any leakage and earned the best possible rating of 1. When turned upside down, 6 of the tumblers earned the best possible rating of 1. Let's compare the cold temperature retention performance of each of the brands next. And the room temperature is very close to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. It's been close to 6 hours, so let's see how the tumblers compare. And the very affordable Chilamics really struggled in this test at 48.7 degrees Fahrenheit. And the Ozark Trail performed quite a bit better than the Chilamics at 45.1 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 3.5 degrees cooler. And the Contigo has a tall and narrow design, but that wasn't enough to move into the lead at 45.9 degrees. And the Arctic Tumblers performed about the same as the Contigo at 45.7 degrees, which is good enough to move into second place behind the Ozark Trail. When it comes to cold temperature retention, the Beast is a beast and moves into the lead at 44.8 degrees. And the CamelBak performed well in the previous review on 20-ounce tumblers, and it performed well this time at 44.6 degrees to move into the lead. And the Buc-ee's not only has a nicely designed logo, it also keeps water the coolest yet at 43.9 degrees. And the Norday struggled to keep the water cool at 46.6 degrees Fahrenheit. And the Tervis barely edged out the Norday at 46.2 degrees, or about 1.5 degrees warmer than average. And the Stanley isn't just a popular tumbler, it also does the best so far at cold temperature performance at 42.8 degrees. And the Yeti performed a little bit better than average at 44.6 degrees, but not quite as well as the Stanley. And the BruMate performed almost as well as the Stanley at 43.5 degrees. And the Milwaukee also performed better than average at 44.4 degrees to move into 4th place behind the Buc-ee's. And the Corkcicle moves into the lead over the Stanley at 42.4 degrees. Very impressive. And the uninsulated cup really struggled at 75.6 degrees. So the Corkcicle came out on top at 42.4 degrees. The Stanley finished in a close second at 42.8 degrees and BruMate 43.5. Let's see how well the tumblers keep hot drinks hot in the next test. In order to have enough water for all the 30-ounce tumblers, I need to fill this 5-gallon container. So I'll have to heat up 2 containers of water. Both containers of water are very close to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's go ahead and place the tumblers in this large commercial freezer that's set to minus 40 degrees Celsius, which works out to be minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And the tumblers have been in the freezer for 4 hours, and unfortunately, the uninsulated cup is mostly frozen. And the Chilamics performed a lot better than the uninsulated cup at 107.6 degrees. And the Ozark Trail trailed the Chilamics by almost 1 degree at 106.7 degrees. And the Contigo's tall and narrow profile and lid design made a huge difference. And 116.1 degrees is about 8.5 degrees hotter than the Chilamics. And the Arctic Tumblers really struggled in this test at 104.9 degrees, or about 2 degrees cooler than the Ozark Trail. And the Beast struggled a little bit more than the Arctic Tumblers at 104 degrees, or about a degree warmer than the Arctic Tumblers. And the CamelBak has a tall and narrow profile just like the Contigo, and it performed very well at 115 degrees. And the Buc-ee's performed well at keeping cold water cold, and it did a lot better than average at keeping hot water hot at 111.9 degrees. And the Norday performed about the same as the Arctic Tumblers at 104.9 degrees. Unfortunately, the Tervis Cat Tumbler really struggled in this test at 103.8 degrees. Just like the Contigo and CamelBak, the Stanley has a very tall and narrow design, and that really helped. 120.2 degrees is the best yet. Very impressive. And the Yeti performed a little bit better than average at 108.5 degrees, but that's not nearly as good as the Stanley. And the BruMate does not claim to be designed for hot liquids, but it still performed better than average at 108.3 degrees. And the Milwaukee claims to offer the longest temperature retention, and it performed a lot better than average at 112.8 degrees. And the Corkcicle's lid looks to be very well insulated, and it did by far the best yet at 126 degrees. Very impressive. So the Corkcicle came out on top at 126 degrees. Stanley finished in second at 120.2 and Contigo 116.1 degrees. Since most of the tumblers leak when they tip over, let's compare the tip angle to see which tumbler offers the most stability. For a 30-ounce tumbler, the Chilamics performed well at 18.1 degrees, and the Ozark Trail tumbler tipped over at only 14.7 degrees. And the Contigo is tall and narrow, but it still performed better than the Ozark Trail at 15.7 degrees. And the Arctic tumblers didn't leak when it was tipped over, and it's less likely to tip over than most of the previous tumblers at 16.7 degrees. And the Beast reached tipping point at 17.1 degrees to move into second place behind the Chilamics. Just like a camel, the CamelBak likes to lay down, and it flopped at only 10 degrees. And the bottom of the CamelBak is very narrow and rounded, which seems like a very poor design. And the Buc-ee's performed quite a bit better than average at 16.8 degrees when it reached tipping point. And the Norday looks stable, but the rubber padding at the bottom of the tumbler really hurt its performance. As you'd expect from a cat, the Tervis stayed on its feet a lot better than most of the competition at 17.8 degrees. And the Stanley looks to be unstable, but it performed better than some of the other brands at 15.6 degrees. And the Yeti also performed extremely well at 17.7 degrees, which is good enough to move into third place behind the Tervis cat. And the BruMate is very narrow on the bottom, and it's very prone to tip over. 12.3 degrees is next to last place. And the Milwaukee really struggled at 14.8 degrees, definitely a tip-over prone tumbler. And the Corkcicle also struggled, laying down at only 14.6 degrees. And the uninsulated cup outperformed all the tumblers at 18.4 degrees. So the uninsulated cup finished in first place. Chilamics also performed well at 18.1. Tervis, Yeti, and Beast also performed well at over 17 degrees. Tumblers are top-heavy, and sooner or later they're likely to fall off a table from around 30 inches. Upon impact, the Chilamics lid came off, spilling close to 30 ounces of water. Unfortunately, the lid on the Chilamics broke into two pieces, and the Ozark Trail's lid also came off from the impact, making quite a mess. However, the lid held up just fine without any visible damage. And the Contigo's lid experienced a tremendous blow, but it stayed on the tumbler. Just a few ounces of water leaked from the Contigo, and the lid held up just fine without any damage. And the Arctic tumbler's lid stayed mostly in position, only losing a few ounces of water. However, part of the lid cover did break from the impact, and the lid will be very difficult to open. Just like the Arctic tumblers, the lid stayed on the Beast after impacting the floor. However, part of the lid cover is now broken from the impact. And the CamelBak seems very prone to tip over, and it lost its cover when it impacted the floor. While it did make quite a mess, the lid survived without any damage. And the lid cover on the Buc-ee's flew off upon impact, and the sliding lid cover became detached from the lid. I later found the slider and snapped it right back into position without any damage. And the Norday's lid did come off from impacting the floor. While the lid doesn't look damaged, it did experience a pretty bad crack, and now the slider isn't sliding into the fully open position. And the Tervis cat experienced a pretty big bounce when it hit the floor. While the lid came off the tumbler, fortunately, the lid and the tumbler survived without any damage. And the Stanley's lid cover flew off the lid when impacting the floor. While the Stanley did lose a few ounces of water, fortunately, the lid attachment snapped right back into position and did not experience any damage. And the Yeti's lid stayed on the tumbler when it came into contact with the ground, but the magnetic slider became detached. Fortunately, the magnetic slider went right back into position and did not experience any damage. Just like the Stanley, the BruMate has a lid that screws into position. Just a very small amount of water escaped from the BruMate, and there isn't any damage to the lid. And the Milwaukee is designed to work with the Packout system and needs to be durable for an industrial environment. And the rotating lid cover flew off from the impact, but it snapped back into position and did not cause any damage. And the metal straw on the Corkcicle attempted to harpoon the concrete floor, but that didn't go so well. There's a small amount of water loss from the impact, but the metal straw did become bent. Assessing tumbler and tumbler lid durability from impacting the concrete floor is highly subjective. However, most of the tumbler lids did survive the impact without any damage and receive the best possible rating of 1. If you're trying to use a tumbler while on the go, lid design can make a huge difference. And the Chilamics lid cover is pretty easy to flip open with a thumb. However, it does take some force at 800 grams or about 2 pounds of force. And the Ozark Trail's lid is just as easy to flip open as the Chilamics. However, it is easier to open at 644 grams. While the Contigo slider moves without too much force at 340 grams, the location of the push and pull point on the lid cover makes it a little bit challenging to open. And the Arctic Tumbler's flip top is not only easy to access, it also flips open with minimal effort at around 380 grams. And the beast is a bit of a beast to open at 1,176 grams of force, which is about 3 times as much force as the Arctic Tumblers. And camels are known for being stubborn, and the CamelBak takes the most force yet to open at 2,228 grams. And the slider is surprisingly stiff. And the raised area on the slider for the Buc-ee seems to be in a good location for easy access. It's also pretty easy to grip and work with at only 620 grams. And the Norday slider doesn't slide too easily at 1,468 grams. The raised area on the slider seems more difficult to grip compared to the Buc-ee's, making it more difficult to work with. And the slider on the Tervis Cat Tumbler is very easy to work with. It also slides with minimal force at only 468 grams. And the lid on the Stanley is pretty easy to rotate, and 678 grams is pretty easy to work with. And the magnetic slider on the Yeti is very smooth and easy to work with. And 402 grams of force seems just about right. And part of the lid cover has to be rotated in order to open the straw on the BruMate. And it takes 556 grams of force to get the lid cover rotating. And the Milwaukee lid cover seems well designed and pretty easy to access. However, 636 grams of force is a little more than some of the other brands. Let's get the Corkcicle since it remains open with the straw. Just about all the tumblers are supposed to hold 30 ounces. And the Chilamics does hold 30 ounces, but there's not enough space inside the container for the lid. And the Ozark Trail seems to hold about the same amount of water as the Chilamics. And the Contigo is supposed to hold 32 ounces, and it held 30 ounces, and the lid fit with room to spare. And the Arctic Tumblers also holds very close to 30 ounces of water. And the Beast is the first 30-ounce tumbler that actually holds 30 ounces and has enough room for the lid. And the CamelBak holds 30 ounces and almost has enough room for the lid. And the Buc-ee's barely held 30 ounces of water, but not enough space for the lid. And the Norday almost ran out of space for 30 ounces of water. And the Tervis is very close to overflowing with 30 ounces of water. And the Stanley advertises 30 ounces, and it does hold 30 ounces, and there's still enough room for the lid. And the Yeti does hold 30 ounces without the lid, but not enough space for the lid. And the BruMate holds 30 ounces, but it's overflowing before the lid can be installed. Just like the BruMate, the Milwaukee holds 30 ounces, but the lid's not going to fit. And the Corkcicle is overflowing before the lid can be fully installed at 30 ounces. And some of the tumblers claim to be dishwasher safe while others need to be hand washed. So let's compare the corrosion resistance of the tumblers next using a combination of hydrogen peroxide, vinegar, and salt. And it's been a couple of hours, and the very affordable Chilamics experienced quite a bit of corrosion. And the Ozark Trails experienced a small amount of rust, but not nearly as bad as the Chilamics. And the Contigo experienced about the same amount of oxidation as the Ozark Trail. And the Arctic tumblers performed by far the best yet with no corrosion. And the Beast experienced about the same amount of corrosion as the Ozark Trail and Contigo. And the CamelBak performed better than the Beast, but not quite as well as the Arctic Tumblers. And the Buc-ee's performed about the same as the CamelBak with just a small amount of rust. And the Norday experienced a lot more rusting than most of the other brands. And the Tervis Cat performed a lot better than most of the other brands at corrosion resistance. And the Stanley has performed very well in most of the previous tests, but this is an area for improvement with a little more rust than some of the other less expensive tumblers. And the Yeti performed extremely well without any corrosion. Just like the Yeti, the BruMate performed extremely well without any rust. Just like the Stanley, the Milwaukee performed better than average on most of the testing, but this is an area that could use some improvement. And the Corkcicle experienced a small amount of corrosion on the top of the tumbler. Assessing corrosion resistance is highly subjective, but the Arctic Tumblers, Tervis Cat, Yeti, and the BruMate received the best possible rating of 1. So which tumbler is best? I've converted raw scores into an A through F grading scale to help make sense of the results. The tumblers are organized from least expensive to most expensive. I really like the Buc-ee's. One of the most important factors for a tumbler is the ability to keep hot drinks hot and cold drinks cold. And the Buc-ee's earned A's for both hot and cold beverage performance. The Buc-ee's is a very stable tumbler and less likely to tip over. However, there is a downside. If the Buc-ee's tips over, it's likely going to spill some of the contents. As far as ergonomics, the lid seems very user-friendly and durable. However, it's probably going to make a mess if it hits the floor from 30 inches of height. It performed about average with regard to corrosion resistance. The Stanley also performed very well for cold and hot beverage temperature retention. It is a very top-heavy tumbler and is likely to cause a small spill if tipped over. Finally, I really like the Corkcicle. It is very expensive and designed specifically for cold beverages. And it performed far better than all the other brands for cold and hot temperature performance. A big thank you to everyone that supports the channel. It really helps since I buy all the products reviewed on the channel to make sure that the results are unbiased without any influence from manufacturers. Also, all the videos in this channel are viewer suggested. So if you have a video idea, I hope you'll take time to leave a comment. Thanks so much for watching. Please take care and look forward to next time.